Hello, today is a new day. Back to Article 8. I'd like to point out some authors that will be required reading for the College of Trustees. So there's going to be a College of Trustees, and they will approve new members of the Board of Trustees. Let's see where that page is. I want to go over the authors and why I pick them. The claim is that the Board of Trustees is here to restore our sovereignty, and the main enemy of our sovereignty is basically the British. Remember, the British are a revanchist state ever since the colonial people wanted to get out from the British Empire. Britain wanted to get the colonies back under their wing, and that included the War of 1812, and then they created the Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is a British law and banking society, a British serving law and banking society. And then, of course, Freemasonry answers to the British royal family, currently the Duke of Kent. And given that a third of the founding fathers and a third of the generals and a third of the people in the Continental Congress were also Freemasons, you have to wonder whether the independence was all that legitimate or authentic. In any case, we need to go with something that's a public document that we can accept as the basis for this British revanchism. And that is the document by Cecil Rhodes called, which is now called today, his Confession of Faith. And that talks about how he wanted to create a society to recapture the United States. And in South Africa, they call it state capture. And this is a document that matters because Cecil Rhodes was Prime Minister of the British Cape Colony. So he was a government official, and he was extremely influential and basically was the voice of the British establishment, something that Carroll Quigley wrote about quite a lot, and even other people prior to that, 50 years prior to Carroll Quigley talking about that. And of course, Carroll Quigley was one of Bill Clinton's professors, and he acknowledged this. Okay, and of course, Bill Clinton is a Rhodes Scholar, which means that he's just a traitor. Okay, Rhodes Scholars are just traitors. That's all you have to know about them. But people have heard that the ruling scum have to admit their ambitions to screw you, and it just flies over people's heads constantly. They just don't get it. But the first thing to read if you're interested in being on the College of Trustees is read Cecil Rhodes' Confession of Faith. That's free online. In line with that, I wrote a paper called Genocidal British Geopolitics. And that's a very important concept as far as I'm concerned. And it's the framework to understand the 20th century. If you understand that concept, you will understand why the world wars happened and all the other little wars that happened. One tactic of genocidal British geopolitics is to pit a country against itself. So you take Ireland and you create Northern Ireland, and now you have the Irish fighting amongst each other in a way. And then you take India, you chop it into pieces, and you get India to fight against itself. And so now again we hear war, potential war between Pakistan and India. And of course, Korea was divided into North and South Korea, and that's another major flashpoint for war. So the most militarized borders in the world are Korean and I'll call it Bharat borders. And of course, East and West Germany, the same thing happened. Pit a nation against itself. And this destroys nations on the one hand, and also is a tactic of an empire. Empires hate nations, and they hate nationalists, and they hate nation-serving ideologies or nation-serving visions. They need to destroy people. And so intrinsically, Britain and the British Empire is can be characterized properly as genocidal British geopolitics. So that paper is free. Um, there's another paper related to the Rhodes Mafia. I call it the Rhodes Mafia, and a few other examples. I have this book. This is from someone, Sean Stone, I think is Oliver Stone's son, and this gives a good summary, outline, and so forth. Here's the back side of it. Worth reading, and it's a thin book, not too fat. So, again, I'm trying to give you quick development on get you up to speed as quickly as possible on this. There's a summary book of Tragedy and Hope by I forgot the guy's name, Plummer. I have his book too. And then there's another one of Cecil Rhodes' co-conspirators was I forgot his last name. His last name is Steed. His first name I forgot, but it's called The Last Will and Testament of Cecil John Rhodes. And then I also threw in Solving 9/11 by Christopher Bolin. If you know about him, he accuses Israel of planting art installations in the Twin Towers. So, and the question is, what is the relationship between Israel and Britain? My view is that Israel is a British colony, and the Queen knighted Shimon Peres, and he accepted knighthood on behalf of the state of Israel. To be a knight is to be a servant. So he's basically admitting publicly that Israel is a British servant state, not a Jewish sovereign state. So that should give cognitive dissonance to everyone who supports Zionism, this or that. So that was on the section sovereignty versus British invasion. Then I have another section on history. There's a Corbett report documentary on World War I, which also relates to Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes Mafia. A very important book is by Engdahl. It's called Century of War, Anglo-American Oil Politics. It's really an amazing book. It was written 30 years ago. That it should be required reading in high school, to be honest. It's so important. You can't, it gives the details on how basically Britain wanted to destroy something called the Berlin to Baghdad Railroad. So the Kaiser and the Ottoman Sultan had a deal to peacefully develop the oil fields of the Middle East. Germany would build the railroads and get 20 kilometers of territory along the railroad to drill for oil. That would pay for the railroad. And the Ottomans would get some other piece of that portion. It didn't require coups. It didn't require wars. It didn't require assassinations. It didn't require Israel. But remember, Joe Biden says that if Israel didn't exist, we would have to invent one, because we need to have a military base there to blow up any European development of the Middle East. It has to be under U.S. control. So it's pure imperialism, and the British are basically using the American mentality to plunder what I call Otto Germania. That's what, if you link the Kaiser and the Sultan's deal, they're creating something called Otto Germania in a way. It can be called today Fortress Europe, more or less. So just imagine that if that whole region was developed peacefully, inspired by the Kaiser and Sultan's vision, it would be, I don't want to say a tropical paradise, something like that, a palm tree paradise, and our entire vision of the world would be different. It's incredible how horrible the alternative is, okay? And all this is because of basically the British and their hatred of Germans. That's what it comes down to. So what's next? Here we have There's a book by Nicholas Kollerstrom. He wrote a very short book called How Britain Initiated Both World Wars. And there's two other related books on this. Hidden History by Doherty and McGregor, and their other book, Prolonging the Agony, same by Doherty and McGregor. There's a good chapter on the Russian Revolution, how British and American bankers wanted to fund and set up banks in the Soviet Union and financed Lenin. The most important fact of the 20th century is that Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin were in Britain, in London, getting aid from Sidney Webb. Now, Britannica says that Lenin translated Industrial Democracy, a book called Industrial Democracy, by Sidney Webb. So there's a direct link between Lenin and Sidney Webb, and Sidney Webb was on the King's Privy Council. It's the highest council in England. So we have a direct connection of Lenin to the King of England with only one man in between. This is the most important fact of the 20th century. It's always overlooked. So-called conservatives, so-called anti-communists never bring it up. But basically, it means that Bolshevism is a British operation. And so the real evil empire is Britain, which promoted mass murder communism into Europe to destroy and bring death to millions, so that Britain could rule the world. That's how they see it. So that's another example of genocidal British geopolitics. I gave you one tactic: pit a nation against itself. Spreading communism and pretending you're an enemy of it is the other tactic. But there's about 10 tactics at least involved in this. I have a book here called Slaughter of the Cities by E. Michael Jones. This is very important because it tells you that the ruling scum in America, which is this British American ruling scum, they don't care about this country. They'll destroy the cities if it makes money, and even if it doesn't make money, they'll still destroy it because they just want power. The British establishment functions with a power calculus. They want power, so they'll weaponize morality, they'll weaponize communism, they'll weaponize anything they can get their hands on, and as long as they come out of the tunnel with power, they're happy. I have a few others. I'm going to skip those. You can just read up on the it's free. Download this at www.yes8.us, and it's free. On culture and economy, Clotaire Rapaille, he's a French psychiatrist. He wrote a book called Cultural Code, and this is very useful to me in understanding language. I found it to be probably the most important book as a writer ever for me, and it's very helpful. You'll understand my writing and the words I use sometimes with that.